Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to be with you. It is Wednesday, Wednesday, the 28th of October, and we are coming to you from Vail, Arizona. It's good to be with you this morning. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's 38 degrees in Vail, so it is absolutely freezing cold for me. It's about 30 degrees too cold for me. So I'm not wearing a parka because I don't want to look weird, but I do have my heater on, because I refuse to turn the heat on the whole house. I just have a little space heater right under my feet, but I turned it off right before we went live so that you wouldn't hear it. What can I say? I'm a wimp when it comes to, that's why I live in Arizona, because although I've lived other places that are cold, and that's not bad either. I've got children in Minneapolis and Chicago, and yeah, they have it a lot worse than I do. Anyway, pray you're having a wonderful day. I'm excited to get together and talk about the Didache. Before we do that, just a couple announcements on birthdays today. Little John Jordaning. What would he be now? 4th grade, 5th grade, something like that. Yeah, he and his little sister Bella. Just wonderful little kids. If you know John, wish him a happy birthday, because he's a year older today. Happy birthday, John. Cute little kid. Just absolutely cute little kid. What other announcements? We at Christ Lutheran Vail are going to be worshiping in person on Sunday at 2 worship services. We have an 8:30 worship service and a 9:30 worship service. So here's how it'll go. You get the inside track on this. It'll be a worship service with communion and a little bit of music. So it'll feel a whole lot closer to a worship service, but it's not the full-blown thing yet, because we don't want to create huge viral loads for everybody. So we will be, kind of muted a little bit. We won't be doing as much singing as we normally do. It'll be kind of it'll be a service of contemplation and beauty. Let me put it that way. But it'll be different from what we normally, had been doing on Sunday morning. So if you join us, it's more of a service of contemplation with the sermon and some beautiful music, because we don't really want loud singing spreading viral load. Apparently, the singing is the part that just can become a super spreader event, and we don't want to do that. So we do want to get together and be in each other's presence and enjoy God's creation and enjoy each other. But it's the sermon then is going to be a shorter sermon than what I've been doing online. But I will still be preparing a whole online thing. So if you wanted to get the full sermon, if you feel like you wanted to delve deeper into that, you could come back and watch the sermon online, like we've been doing. And of course, for the people who are still staying at home and sequestering for whatever reason, they will still get the Sunday morning stuff. So that's just kind of the plan for November, December, but we are getting together again. And so that's very, very exciting, trying to navigate this new normal. As a matter of fact, the sermon series is New Normal, the journey on the road ahead, because the road ahead is kind of foggy. We're not exactly sure what's around the bend. And so we're going to talk about that. Like, how do you navigate the road ahead? What is the new normal? How do you process the old and bring in the new, appropriately? So we're going to be talking about that. You won't want to miss it. That's for sure. If you're in person or online, these will be some thoughts that you can share with people that are grieving the loss of some things in their life. Because whenever you have a new normal, it means that the old normal is going away, and there's grieving there. And it's not just, relationships. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that we grieve about when we talk about a new normal. All right. I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about. If you're joining me online, thanks for being with me. And it looks like I'm just one microphone this morning, so that's good. We had 2 microphones going on Monday, and that didn't work out really well. All right, we are in Didache chapter 4. And as I've mentioned Monday and Tuesday, the Didache is basically the catechism of the early church. And these were the things when they would have neophyte Christians come into the presence of the Christian church, and they say, yes, I want to be a follower of Jesus Christ. I want to be baptized. I want to have what you have. Then the early church cobbled together these things that they wanted to teach catechumens, and then when they taught these things, then they would baptize the catechumens. And so that is kind of what this Didache is. It's the teaching of the early disciples, the early apostles, kind of put together in a form that's more of a catechism than it is just the Gospels or the letters of Paul or any of the epistles. And we've talked about the way of life, and now we're into the duties of the catechumen as they're being involved in the church life, which is part of the way of life. We've mentioned this before, but every Christian should be connected to other Christians. That's how you grow in your faith. That's how you get sustenance for living. When bad things happen or dark things happen in your life, being connected to other Christians who understand God's grace and his love and his mercy, and they can surround you with that love and that grace and that mercy, whatever you need in the moment. That is so important and critical to your growth as a Christian. So in chapter 4, we're talking about what it means to be part and connected to the church. And so we made it all the way to chapter 4, verse 5. And verse 5 was talking about, verse 6. Well, let's just look at verse 6 again. Verse 6, which is about in the middle of this, maybe 5 lines from the bottom. Verse 6, of whatsoever thou hast gained by thy hands, thou shalt give a ransom for thy sins. So, and this almost talks about, it seems like the way this it almost reads like an indulgence in the early church, right? Which is, an indulgence was an amount of money that you paid that was kind of like a ransom for sin. And it was violated terribly during the 1500s, which is why the Protestant Reformation happened, because Luther fought against indulgences because he said, no, the penalty for sin is death, but Jesus paid the penalty. You don't have to pay any amount of money as a ransom for your sin. Jesus paid the whole entire price as a ransom for sin. But it's easy to see, well, there's a couple ways I guess you could look at this. One is that it's easy to see that people want to get off easy, right? They want to pay as human beings, we always want to pay something for the penalty for our sin. We don't want to let Jesus do it. We want ourselves to do it. And it is a hard doctrine for us to believe that Jesus paid everything, paid all prices for our sin. But that is the truth. There is nothing we can do, and there is nothing that we will ever do to pay a ransom for our own trespasses and sin. We would be dead in our sin if it wasn't for Jesus, who took upon himself the price and the ransom for sin. So we as human beings don't have to do anything. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to do something, that we don't want to make a retribution for sin. And so it's easy to see that in the early church, that if people said, I feel like I need to have a retribution for sin, the church is like, okay, yeah, you can give money as a retribution for sin. I mean, you can kind of see how that would start. But there's another aspect to this, which is there is, any time we sin, and even though we know that there's a spiritual component to sin that has to be paid for by Jesus, which he did, there's still this uneasiness in our life that on the left-hand kingdom. And when I say the left-hand kingdom, it's like, it's not our relationship with Jesus. That's the right-hand kingdom stuff. The left-hand kingdom is our relationship to ourself and the earthly world and the world around us and the world that we live in, which is, you can think of this as love God and love your neighbor, right? So love God is the vertical component, which is the right-hand kingdom. We love God. And then we love our neighbor, which is the horizontal component, which is the left-hand kingdom. Has nothing to do with eternal salvation or our standing with God or in the kingdom, but it has to do with our living in the world and all the physical components of the world. And it kind of does. It makes a cross, right? Which is kind of cool. So it's the left-hand kingdom and the right-hand kingdom. So when I'm talking about the left-hand kingdom, I'm talking about the things on this earth. And so when I read this, whatever you've gained by your hands, thou shalt give a ransom for thy sins. I don't see it as a vertical component ransom for our sins, that, trying to get right with God, because we could never do that. Jesus does that. But there are some people in the left-hand kingdom that need to feel ransomed. They want to produce something. And I guess in Lutheran terms, it might be the third use of the law. The first use of the law is that it's a guide. The second use of the law is a curb. But the third use of the law, is if we are followers of Jesus Christ and in the kingdom, how then should we live? What are the things that we should do? Because once you're in the kingdom, you want to please the king. And as pleasing the king, there are things that we want to do in this world to please the king. It's a left-hand thing. I mean, it's my body, it's my life and everything. I want to serve Jesus and I want to do that. And so we want to give of ourselves to the king. And if in our head, in the left-hand things, that's kind of a ransom for sin, I think that's okay. But if in our head, that's a ransom for sin, that, our giving in a service is a ransom for the penalty of sin in the kingdom, Jesus took care of the whole entire penalty. And that really is the beauty of the Reformation, because as you can see, this could be really, really abused. I mean, you could have a church. We did have a church that was just ravishing Europe by going into communities and villages and saying, you need to pay a ransom for sin. And they were collecting a huge amount of money, and then they were taking all this money back to Rome so they could build St. Peter's Basilica, which is a beautiful building. I mean, the money went to a use that's just creates beauty in this world, which is what they felt was important at that time. But putting it on the backs and the souls of our eternal salvation, that's where I think that's where it comes into a problem. You never want to burden somebody's eternal salvation by something that they do, because Jesus paid the whole entire price. And by the time of the Reformation, this was pervasive in the system, and Luther saw it and fought against it, and of course Reformed not only created the Reformation and all the churches and denominations that came out of the Reformation, but it really created a Reformation in Rome, which was long overdue. As a matter of fact, there are some Roman Catholics, very few, that so much appreciate Luther, because there would never have been a Reformation in the Roman Catholic Church if it had to been the Reformation that Luther started. I'm thinking particularly of France. They love Luther in France, but it's about the only place where they like Luther. If you see Catholic theologians today, most of them here in the United States, they still are very, very angry with Luther. And I don't know why. What they could do, the Pope could reverse all that, canonize Luther and make him the Order of Luther, like the Order of Francis, or, Order of Mary or something like that, and try to create some unity. But I don't think that'll ever happen in my lifetime. And I'm not sure I want it to happen. I mean, I'm okay with the way the system is, but Luther was as good for the Roman Catholic Church as he was for the world in general. Because there is, just to be very, very clear, any ransom for sin for our eternal security and in the kingdom is only from Jesus. But there is a desire in the human nature, because we live in the human world, to do something ourselves to kind of make retribution for the evil that's caused because of the sin that we do. Let me put it that way. It's like a balance. It's a balance. Justice is that balance. You've got this scale. And we do something horrible in this world, and it tips the scale in this world towards evil. And so in this world, we want to do something to tip the balance in the other direction. Let me. That's a better way to put it. We want to tip the scale in the other direction for the things of the world, for the left-hand kingdom, because of the impact of the sin that we do. And maybe that's a go. As I think through that, maybe that's a better way to think of all this. has nothing to do with being in the kingdom. It has to do with the world that we live in. Anyway, I think I've dogged on that enough. So I'm going to continue going. We're going to go into verse 7, and verse 7 is 5 lines from the top here. Verse 7, thou shalt not hesitate to give, nor shalt thou grumble when thou givest, for thou shalt know who is the good paymaster of the reward. And we talk about this in terms of Christian giving, that when I speak about giving, I usually say it should be voluntary, cheerful, and proportional, right? I mean, nobody should ever force you to give. I like the idea of proportional giving, that we give a percentage of what God has given us. That's a great way to think about giving, although it's not the only way to think about giving, but it's a good way to think about giving. Proportional, voluntary, and then cheerful. God wants a cheerful giver. So that certainly is within the realm of the context of Scripture. That you shouldn't grumble, you shouldn't hesitate. And this is so true. I've noticed this about people who give. If you've been trained to be a good steward of your resources, and what I mean by a good steward of your resources, everybody has been given resources by God. Everybody. It may be $10, it may be $100, $1,000, $10,000, $1 million, whatever you've been given, that is a gift from God. And we should be able to live within that means. I mean, I don't know what that looks like. And the more complex a society is, the harder that is. So I do not deny that can be a problem. But without the complexity of government regulation, talking about zoning codes and building codes and causing the price of housing to just go out of the roof, which it does, you should be able to find a way to live within your means. And if everybody tried to do that, there would be market forces to create products so that everybody could live within their means. So you live within your means, and if you give if you are in the habit of giving back to God something that's been given to you, then you are at peace, you're at harmony, you're not worried about money, you're not worried about funds, you're not worried about resources. I mean, obviously, a catastrophe like the pandemic hits, everyone's worried, right? But I'm just talking about normal day-to-day living. And I've just noticed this, when people align themselves with that way in their life, and then you ask them, you do ask, hey, we've got this need, they don't hesitate at all. It's like, of course I'm going to give. I'm not even asking how much or anything like that, but just like, yeah, I'll give. There's no question. That's a need. I perceive it as a need. I see that as our community's in need, and so I'm not going to hesitate, and I'm not going to grumble about it. I have noticed that so much, and you see the maturity in some people when you do an ask for giving, and it's like, yeah, I'm there. Tell me what you need. I'm happy to do that. So grateful for mature Christians in this world. That's for sure. So don't hesitate to give. Don't grumble when you give, for you should know who is the good paymaster for the reward. So, and Jesus, of course, is the paymaster. He's the guy who is the paymaster. All right, we're going to go on to verse 8. Thou shalt not turn away the needy, but shalt share everything with thy brother, and shalt not say, what is thine own? For if you are a sharer in the imperishable, how much more in the things which perish? So this is beautiful. I mean, we store up our treasures in heaven, but we also do work, the hands and the feet here on earth. So we should not turn away the needy. Now, this gets really complicated because we live in a world where our government, whether it's local, state, federal, or whatever, World Health Organization, whatever these organizations are. There are many, many, many organizations that have been formed to try to meet the needs of the people who are truly in need in the world. And Jesus said the poor will always be with us, but the needy, there will always be needs in this world. And so there are lots and lots and lots of governmental agencies, in nonprofit agencies throughout the world that are trying to meet the needs. And that's a beautiful thing. And I believe that all of that that way of thinking in Western society, that we should pool together our resources and help out the needy in our own world, in our own community and across the world, all of that comes from Jesus and Christianity. People say the United States is no longer a Christian nation because we don't have a theocracy, or we don't have a dedicated religion or anything like that. But if you dig deep in the United States, the hardest thing to do in any organization is to create a culture or a DNA. I mean, it is hard to change the culture and the DNA of any organization. It takes years and years and years and years to create it, and then it takes years and years and years and years to destroy it. The DNA, the underlying DNA, or the culture, or the things that motivate a culture or an organization, those are very, very hard to change. So the United States was founded, most of the people that came over to the United States and began creating this great nation all came over from Europe, were all very deeply religious people. And if you're a deep follower of Jesus Christ, then you are naturally inclined to give of yourself, of your time, talent, and treasure, because that's what Christianity is. And so that is deeply embedded in the DNA of the United States. So even though the government, which sits on top of the DNA, may do things that don't seem very Christian, or just seem odd or whatever, or ruffle our feathers, if you dig deep into the DNA of Christianity, the United States still, I believe, is a community, a country that has that DNA of Christianity and giving of ourselves and caring for our neighbor and stuff like that. Why do I bring this as a point? Because there are nations across the world still today where it's man eat man, dog eat dog. There is no love whatsoever for their neighbor. It's all every man for himself. And you see these in countries where there is a country that is a country without God, without Jesus, a country without this DNA, this deep DNA of giving. They're horrible, failing countries that because they spend so much time fighting each other, that they don't work together for the common good. I mean, there are nations out there that don't have a DNA of Jesus in them, and I would say that they are very, very, very bad places to go. They're becoming less and less, and I think more and more countries today are being, they're helped by, organizations with the DNA of Christianity within them, so they're starting to see the benefit of all that. But when you look at the Mayans or the Aztecs or the Incas or, any of these historical societies where it was man eat man, where the culture was not one of giving, but one of taking and power, they're just not good cultures. Anyway, so I am very grateful that that our DNA of giving to the needy and sharing with thy brother is still part of the Christian DNA. And everything that we do in this world, when we give of ourselves to the world around us, all those are treasures in heaven. There are also things on this earth that are going to perish, but this completely sounds biblical to me. I mean, I could go back to what Jesus says about money and storing up your treasures in heaven and all that. But if we're going to share in the imperishable worlds, then how much more should we share in the imperishable things? Or if we're going to share in the imperishable things, how much more should we share in the things that perish? That definitely rings true to me in my Christian years. So I don't have any argument with that. Actually, this whole chapter 4, verses 1 through 8, the only thing that really needs some explanation is this whole thing about giving a ransom for your sin by giving of your hands or whatever. That kind of hackles a Protestant's ears, but I think you could probably talk yourself into what they're trying to say here, because one of the things that I do believe about the Didache, because it is so early, it's close to Jesus, it shouldn't be that corrupted, if you want to say that. So I think a lot of the stuff that's in here should ring true because it should be in alignment with the Gospels and what Jesus said. So that's kind of how I'm going through this. All right, I'm going to turn the page on this and see what is next. Yeah, verse 9. Let's just take a look at it. Verse 9, thou shalt not withhold thine hand from thy son or thy daughter, but thou shalt teach them to fear of God from their youth up. Oh my goodness. That certainly sounds biblical, right? Withhold thine hand from thy son or daughter. So in today's society, we don't discipline with corporal punishment. Although, and I've talked about this before, when I was a kid, I got corporal punishment all the time. My mom was a general in corporal punishment. She was an admiral in corporal punishment. She was very, very good at it, and I needed it pretty bad. I was a pretty wild kid. So I'm grateful that she punished me as much as she did. I think I am who I am because she punished me. She let me know that she was serious by corporal punishment. Today, we don't necessarily. And this kind of started in the 80s, where people started looking at corporal punishment and doing research and saying, is it really helpful or is it really not helpful? So in the 80s, when Jennifer and I had children, we took a course in our Bible study. It was called, I think, Growing Kids God's Way. And the guy that led the study basically went through the Bible and talked about all the different places where it says that you should, not withhold your hand from your son or daughter. Because there is language like that in Scripture, and it's here too. But I've also taken since then, and so when we raised our kids, we definitely did have corporal punishment. We definitely spanked our children. I don't know if they remember that, if they're angry over us at that. I don't know. I should ask them if they were angry about us having corporal punishment. It wasn't often, and it was only just to get their attention, to let them know that mom and dad were serious. And when it comes to parenting children, you have to at some point get their attention. So whatever it is that you do, if it's not corporal punishment, you have to get their attention. I like the physical punishments more than I like the emotional punishments. I believe that, if you substitute for corporal punishment kind of a gotcha game, psychological game with your children, threatening things. I mean, the one thing I do like about corporal punishment is you do it, they cry, they don't die from it, and it's over, right? I mean, it's a ransom for their sin, right? But if you substitute that with something that is more messing with their mind, then I think they're always trying to second guess. I mean, I don't know how to say this, but I just wonder, if you're not going to do physical punishments, then you move into the area of emotional punishments, or and I really do believe that. The one benefit of physical punishment is that it's over, it's done, it's in the realm of physical, so you can tell when it's done. I mean, but when you start messing with little kids' minds, I just hope that you're being very gentle, because the mind is a horribly complex thing, and the thing you think might go into a mind, may not come out that well. So, I've thought a lot about punishment, because I am very grateful for my mom and dad for doing corporal punishment to me. And I know it's not a popular thing today in society. I guess the physical thing that we do now is time out, right? We put our children in time out. And I think if time out is enough, I think that's a great way to punish. We never really did time out with our children, but I've seen it. But I've also seen a lot of kids, at Walmart, the kids having a meltdown, and they're, the parents trying to logically tell the kid, or if you don't stop this, then when we get home, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and start doing the mind games and things like that. Whereas I've also seen in Walmart a kid, having a meltdown, and the mom reaches down and spanks the kid, and the whole Walmart's, horrified because you did that. But the kid shuts up. There's a, I guess I guess I'm glad that I'm not a parent anymore, and I don't judge any parents. I mean, whatever you do, it's your job with the children. I, uh, I agree that corporal punishment probably in today's society is just not accepted, and probably we shouldn't do it. But I do believe you have to get the kids' attention, whatever it is. And I really like the things in the realm of physical, because it's something physical and tangible, and then it's over, because typically physical things are, there's a beginning to it and an end to it. It's like prison, right? I mean, there's just a beginning and an end. Whereas when you start going into the realm of emotional or intellectual, you want to try to out-reason a child or out-emotional a child, and you're playing with areas that are just very difficult because they're on the inside as opposed to the physical stuff, which is at the outside. I hope that's making sense. I don't know. So when I read this in verse 9, do not withhold your hand from your son and daughter, I don't necessarily think this has to be corporal punishment, but I think it's that, don't let sin go. This is very, very true. If you've set up a standard, or your child is doing something that's sinful and you want to correct that, you should do that. That is a job of a parent. You should correct the sin, because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And if you don't do it, you're going to mess up your child in the world. So it is good to not withhold your hand from your son and daughter, whatever that's, a physical corporal thing, or a physical timeout, or a physical, I'm going to do this punishment for you. I think that's good, good advice. So I don't really have anything wrong with chapter 4, verse 9. All right. So, it's about time. So we'll pick up in verse 10 tomorrow, and we'll continue going through this. Oh man, it is looking like this might be, I don't think we'll just have to see how long this takes, because now that I'm getting into it, it's really kind of fun. So let's close in prayer. Gracious God, for the blessings of this day, we thank you for this time together and your Spirit. We so much appreciate you. Be with us today. Fill us with your grace and your love and your peace. Until we meet again tomorrow, keep us in your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. May God richly bless you and the rest of your day until we meet tomorrow. God's richest blessings. Take care. Bye.